Yo, get in, chop.
I'm a bit self-aware, sometimes it's fucked up, but life is gonna lie, so I ain't gonna slow up. I'm on a mission to change the face of mental health, kicking knowledge to my people, cause you know that health is wealth. It's your lucky day, cause you tuned into the greatest. Out here striving to survive, sometimes we fake it till we make it. If your mental health is slipping, then please don't touch that dial, go on and grab.
Yo, what's up, you guys? It's your girl, Treaty OPC, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Self-Aware and Amped Up podcast. So today I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to share with you guys my journey with EMDR. For many of you guys who have been listening this season, you guys know that I had one of my good friends, LV or Lakeisha Varner, come on the show earlier in the season, and she shared a lot about her EMDR journey, and it really inspired me to move forward with the process of exploring EMDR. I also shared parts of my journey where I talked about how I was being triggered by a lot of things that were coming up with me after the death of my dad last year. And so that's kind of what prompted my journey, a combination of wanting to see what the process itself was like, but also experiencing a lot that came up for me over time with just the grief feelings and the trauma responses that I was having when other people were passing away. I believe it was in April when a young man from my hometown, Cedric Talley, passed away, that it really hit me like, we are fucked. Like, everybody is going to die. And this shit sucks. It really sucks to think about the fact that every single person on this earth, everybody that we love is going to die. And so wrestling with that, having somebody my age, a class ahead of me, pass away, it brought up so much shit about my dad. And I remember going to the bar that night. We went to this spot in Riverdale, and of course they had a nice little Jameson special, and I'm in there and I'm drinking. And the more I drink, the more emotional I became. And it resulted in me having an explosive episode on my wife in the car on the way home. And it really it set me back a lot with my healing, because it helped me realize that there were so many parts of me that were unhealed as a result of my dad's death. And so there's so many things that came up for me. And I think that was the realization that I needed deeper level work than what I was doing with my primary therapist. And so that's what started me on my journey. I was able to interview a lot of people. And again, LV was one of those pivotal moments. That interview with her really broke it down to me, like, you need to try this. And so that started me on my journey. So I believe I had one more episode where I kind of spazzed the fuck out in May. And that was a catalyst for me really reaching out to find someone that specialized in EMDR. And that got me on my way. And so I went on Psychology Today and I was looking. It was important to me to find a therapist who was, one, Black. That was first and foremost. I mean, I no disrespect to other therapists, but in order for you to truly connect with me on my journey, I felt that the person needed to be Black. I needed them to be female. I have some issues with males, not that I couldn't work with a male therapist, but I just don't necessarily identify or relate to men in the same way that I relate to kind of the nurturing nature of a female therapist that I felt like would help me process through the things that I was dealing with better. And so those two things were important to me. And I wanted to do it face to face. So that meant, because I wanted to do it face to face, I had to find someone that was within a 20 to 30 mile radius of where I live. And so that put me finding someone that was one city over from where I live and really just shoot my shot in their inbox. I know that EMDR therapists are hard to come by because so many people want to try this type of therapy. And so with that being said, it took me just going on Psychology Today and writing them a message to say, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. I need help processing through grief and loss around the death of my dad and a lot of other childhood things that I've dealt with. And I'm really wanting to connect. And I was so disappointed that Monday morning when I did get a call back from the agency that she worked with saying that that she didn't have any spots. But what I did was I went and I prayed. And I was like, God, look, I need this. You know where I'm at. You know that I need this in order for me to really be able to heal. And so that conversation with God, I was like, God, this is the person that I need to be connected with. This is the person that I need in order for me to be able to go on this journey and truly start to heal. And so with that being said, that's where that part of my journey started. I want to say like 2 p.m. the next day, she emailed me and set up a consultation with me for that Thursday of that week. And we did the consultation. Now, I had no intentions, if I'm being perfectly honest, I had no intentions of letting her know that I was a therapist, because I don't like how people sometimes get nervous with working with other therapists, because we, again, like doctors, can be the worst patients sometimes. Luckily, I'm not that type, but it slipped out because, again, a therapist is who I am at the core. It's a big part of my identity. And so it did come out that that I was a therapist during the consultation call. I shared with her that I was seeing another therapist and that I had been a therapist with for years. And she asked, if I planned on discontinuing that relationship. And at that moment, I really wasn't sure if she was asking because of insurance purposes, or she was asking because she didn't want me to be seeing another therapist and her at the same time. Another therapist can be really funny about that sort of thing. And so I really didn't have much thought into what I planned on doing with my current therapist at the time, but I knew that this was something that I needed. So I know I've kind of dove into my experience with the EMDR, but I do want to circle back to just kind of talk a little bit about what the experience is. So this is a type of therapy where it deals with eye movement and reprocessing. So I had no clue what I was walking into. I've heard about EMDR. Even in my master's program, it was really starting to take off at the time. And so I heard about what the experience of it was like, but I didn't fully know what to expect. So if you don't really know what EMDR is itself, the acronym EMDR, basically it's eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And that is a mouthful in itself, but it's basically a structured therapy that encourages us to focus briefly on our trauma memory while basically engaging in what we call bilateral stimulation. So the bilateral stimulation with the eye movement. So the way that we do it with my therapist is through the use of tappers. And so I hold these tappers in my hand. They're in my right hand, my left hand, and they are vibrating back and forth. And that bilateral stimulation, which I learned from another therapist earlier this year at a conference that I went to, but that movement, basically it helps calm down the brain, but it also helps you start to process things differently. And so when I'm doing this, I close my eyes and the tappers are going back and forth, and it's helping me to kind of, re-experience certain things. It is very vivid. It's very intense. And I always tell people, make sure that you know what you're getting into if you sign up to do this type of work, because it will take you back. And it's taken me back so far in terms of like even going back to childhood memories and my first experience of going through the loss of a person. So essentially, with this particular type of therapy, it's supposed to help you kind of reprocess things and respond differently to the triggers and things of that nature. So I'm only a couple of months into my journey, so I don't know what the rest of my journey is going to look like, but I will talk a little bit about what the first couple of sessions look like. So the intake session was interesting because it was mostly information gathering. So I'm telling this person my entire life story, everything from first memories of losing someone earlier on. For those that have been listening to the show, you guys know that I was raised by my paternal great grandmother and my paternal great aunt. And so my grandmother was in her 60s or something when she initially got custody of me. And so I used to always be afraid that she was going to die. Like that was always my biggest fear. I remember we lived on Key Street when I was a kid, and I remember us moving over to Vine Street, and one of my grandmother's friends and our family friends, Mr. Weedy, passed away. And when Mr. Weedy passed away, it was the realization for me, oh shit, this man was old. Oh shit, my grandmother is old. This sucks. My grandmother's going to die. And so as a child, you have to realize me being between 4 and 5 years old at the time, processing this, that put fear in my heart about my grandmother dying. And that was something that I struggled with up until the day that she died. I remember as a kid going over to her bed, trying to make sure she was still breathing because we shared the same room as a kid. We had twin beds and she slept on the other side of the room from me. And so it was a challenge and it was a lot. So I went back to those memories as a kid and experiencing some of what came up for me. It was like the images of a coffin and the images of a grave site. I remember as a kid always being afraid to drive through graveyards or drive by graveyards. It was probably until after my grandmother passed away when I was in my 20s that I've been able to now go to a graveyard or drive past a graveyard without like completely feeling terrified. And so we went back to a lot of those memories. And so before we got into the working phase of EMDR, and I am not an EMDR clinician, so I can't tell you all of the different phases of it. But what I can say is that before we went into the actual process work part of it, my therapist had me start to use the tappers to just get familiar with the process and to start creating two things. One, we created my safe and calm place. Now, I had just come back from a trip to Puerto Rico when we first started the development part of this phase of the EMDR. And so I had just come from the beach. So of course, the beach is my safe place. And so we practice going through that imaging of me being on a beach and me feeling the sand and me feeling the waves and kind of creating this place to go to when I have moments where I feel distress. And so that was the first part of it, creating that image. And the second part of that working or beginning phase was creating a space for me to contain my thoughts, whether they're my unpleasant thoughts, those memories, those things that I need to put in the container after each session. And so I created a container. My container I went back to this episode of NCIS where Ziva and Tony were stuck in a shipping container. So that's what my container experience was like. And I remember even in that session where I was developing the container and the lock that went on the container to kind of create a space for me to have these things, I was able to create this space and then put these items in there. And it was really difficult to not put the memories in there, but to put the emotions, because my emotions felt very big at the time. Now, I started this process when I had taken time off of work to focus on my treatment. I had taken 4 weeks off FMLA and I think 1 week vacation. And so I was using this time specifically to focus on my emotional growth and health. And so my emotions seemed very big at the time. And they were very big. And so I had to find a way to make these emotions smaller. And so a lot of EMDR is imagery, like it's seeing these things in your mind. And some things feel very real. And for me, some things are more of a struggle. My therapist, I remember her saying to me, you're a very literal person. And I'm like, yep, I am. Like, it's hard for me to imagine certain things, but I can go back to certain memories. And so those things become very real. And so with the emotional size of a lot of my emotions, that part was hard. And I was able to process putting them in a container and making sure that they're in a safe space. So that was the initial stage of my EMDR journey. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I was like, do I really need this container? Because I'm so great with compartmentalizing. But in hindsight, I'm glad that we created those spaces for me to be able to go and for me to be able to store my container. I think the hardest part for me with EMDR is the body sensations, because I have a lot of chronic pain. So I don't necessarily always know what I'm feeling or how I'm feeling certain things. So that was its own challenge. But I learned more to tap into some of those other parts of my feelings, not necessarily just in my body, but in my mind. This heifer gave me a feelings chart. And I was like, you know what? I ain't even gonna hold you because I definitely needed that. But it was definitely, it made me have to go inward to sit with my emotions, which is something I'm not very good at. My therapist, Alex, always has me journaling, and I've been journaling consistently since 2023. but on and off. And I will say that when my dad went into the hospital, I stopped journaling. And the reason being, I did not want to memorialize all of those bad memories. I wanted to just be able to focus on getting through it. But with this process, it has made me be a little bit more raw in terms of my emotions and really being able to navigate through a lot of the feelings that came up for me. So that was the first part. It wasn't hard. It was just like, it was hard because I like to get into it. Let's make it happen. And to me, it was going very slowly. And I was getting ready to actually go back to work by the time we got into the deeper part of EMDR. But I will say that once I started the actual journey of it, it was fucking intense. Like, it was fucking intense. And it was so intense that the first image that I was targeting, the image of a casket and the image of graveyards, I went back in my mind to that experience of seeing my dad in the casket and not looking like him, because the people that did his funeral, Lord, God bless them. But my cousin, who was the owner of the funeral home, he had just passed away a couple of weeks beforehand. And so he did not look like himself in the casket. We didn't know, we need to get someone to come cut his hair, because who the hell knows how to plan a funeral. So looking at that image, it made me sad, because one, he didn't look like himself. We didn't know how to take care of him after he died to make sure he was presentable, because that wasn't really communicated with us. And again, I understand that at the time, Lake Dunstan and Robinson Funeral Home, they were going through their own shifts and challenges with everything, with losing my cousin Willie T. And so I get it, but it was also just traumatizing, because it's like, this is the image that I have of him. This and the image of him being on a ventilator. And so with that being said, I'm seeing these images. I close my eyes. I'm doing the bilateral stimulation, and tears fall like rain from heaven, because everything that I had been holding in, every tear that I had probably suppressed over the last year or so, and that's not to say I never cried, but every tear that I had suppressed, it started coming out. I probably cried so much during that first session where we were actually getting into the meat of it than I had cried in the last year. And I'm crying in front of somebody, y'all. I don't cry in front of people. Like, that is difficult for me to do. I got this person sitting across the room looking at my eyes go back and forth to make sure that I'm processing. And then I'm just fucking crying. I told this lady, I said, I'm gonna buy you some tissue and I'm gonna bring you some tissue, because this ain't me. I don't do all this crying. But it was so intense because I could see it. I could see him in the casket. I could see him on the ventilator. And I will say that I protected myself so much from seeing him on the ventilator. I just was not ready. A couple of months before then, my cousin's husband had collapsed and had a seizure at her 50th birthday party. And seeing this was so traumatic for me. And I can only imagine what my cousin, who was doing CPR, must have been feeling. And then his wife must have been feeling. But for me being in this space, going from dancing to all of the grooves to seeing him and calling 911 and trying to, help as much as I could and praying, like, that shit was so fucking traumatic. That's probably the most traumatic thing I've ever gone through in my life. And then 2 months later, having my dad go through this process, I was like, I can't really process seeing him on a ventilator like this. And so for me, it was just the emotional weight of all of this shit coming back at one time. And all I see is like just him. And then I went back to the experience of seeing my cousin's husband. And it was just a lot that came up for me. And so I was like in there just bawling my eyes out. And then, she's asking me at the end of the session how I'm feeling. And it finally clicked for her, because she asked me, like, she basically said I was super guarded. Now, mind you, I'm very matter of fact when it comes to things. I don't really put a lot of emotions behind the things that I say. My life has been trauma. So like, even going back to childhood things, it's like, I can talk about them like, oh shit, it's like going to get a slush from Sonic. I can talk about them like they're absolutely nothing, even though it can be the most horrific shit you ever heard. And so I think because there was not a lot of emotion connected to the trauma that I was telling her about. She maybe didn't see that, one, I needed this fucking help, or two, that I felt comfortable working with her. And I can understand why, because again, I can be very like matter of fact, but also like, I don't give a fuck. And so after that session where we actually went into the processing, she was like, okay, I can really see you now. I can really see that you have a very tough exterior, but inside there's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of pain and things that you hold in. And I'm like, yes, God damn it. You see me. You fucking see me finally. And I had also told her that part of the reason that I probably didn't feel as comfortable is because, again, I have been working with Alex for 5-6 years. I cuss like a sailor. Whatever the fuck comes out. And I think in this new environment, you're seeing me not only through the lens of a client, but also the lens of someone who is also a therapist. And I think for me, there was like this, well, I want to be free, but I don't want to be too free because I don't want her to think I'm batshit crazy. And I finally let that shit go. And I was like, look, I cuss a lot. I say motherfucker, I say bitch, I say damn, I say shit, I say everything. I say, and in this space, I need to be free enough to say whatever the fuck comes up, because this is hard shit and I can't do this unless I'm able to be my authentic self and really just be candid with you. And so that's where I'm at. And so once I said that, and once we started actually getting into the process and she could see like, okay, yeah, no, this bitch is crazy, but she really needs this work. Not that my therapist called me crazy. She didn't, but she definitely saw more of my pain because I was more vulnerable in this process than I think I have been in a very long time with anyone. And so it was hard shit. Those first couple of sessions of processing through that, they were fucking hard. And before each session and after each session, she will check in with me to see like how disturbing my target image would be. And I would rate it on like a scale of 1 to 7. And then we would work through adding in these beliefs. So one of my beliefs was that, I'm helpless. I don't have any control because obviously I can't control death, and we were trying to replace that thought and that image with the processing of the fact that I can only control what I can control. And so that's what we worked through with the first target image. And it took us maybe, I want to say we started on this image, maybe the end of July. And I think we finished up with that image, the end of August going into September. So we did about 4 sessions with that image, processing what came up. And it was a lot. But I was able to see some reduction in my responses. And I think one of the biggest thing I learned is that it's not really about death itself. It's about unexpected losses that really fuck me up. Like when I have time to process a loss, then I can process it and I can get myself prepared for it. But when I don't, and it's something like my dad being rushed to the hospital on one Tuesday night and then never coming back home, like that shit fucks with me. But knowing my grandmother Alice had terminal cancer and having the opportunity to go to Puerto Rico and think about it on the beach and start to process that loss 6 months in advance, that was much different for me than having less than 2 weeks to wrap my head around the fact that the man that gave me life, the man that had been my Superman, my MacGyver, that he left this earth without me being able to truly say goodbye. That fucked with me so much. And I'll be honest with you guys, like my relationship with my dad was not that fucking great. When I look at the relationship that he had with my younger brother, or even my twin, bro. He's not my twin. He's a year and a half younger than me. But even the relationship that he had with them was so different. And then seeing how my youngest sister was impacted, all of that, I feel very disconnected because I feel like I got stuck so much in my grief at one point because I was grieving the version of him that I lost in 1996. I was grieving the version of him that I knew in the 80s, that I shared all of these great memories with, being able to go to his house and spend time with my stepsister and my little brother. Like I was missing that version of him, not the version of him that was actually present after 1996, after the drugs and the divorce from my stepmom and all of that occurred. I was looking at him through those eyes, and I got stuck because I was so fucking angry with how the people at Columbus Regional Hospital, or whatever the fuck they call it now, treated him. They treated him like another crackhead that came into the ER. And I know because I worked at that hospital. I think it's in the Piedmont system now or whatever, but I know how people in the ER were treated when they came in, especially Black people or whatever. That's the city hospital, and not much has changed there. So I'm so angry with the people that work there because I feel like they failed him. I feel like I failed him. I feel like my aunt failed him. I feel like we all failed him. And I especially feel like the fuck nigga that sold him laced drugs failed him. So the fact that I'm able to talk to you about this without a lot of the emotions that were definitely there in the room with me when I was processing through this shit with my therapist, it says to me that the EMDR is working. It says that I am making progress in being able to work through these emotions. And right now, we're on target image number 2, which is my dad on the video that my brother was showing me. Because the night that my dad went into the hospital, my aunt called me. My dad was telling her he didn't want to go to the hospital. He was fine. She was calling me to basically get permission to send him to the hospital. I couldn't see him. My dad known to pass out, known to be, like too drunk or too high. So it's not an abnormal thing. So I called my brother and I was like, hey, Janan says, he's not right now. Can you go lay eyes on him and let me see or whatever? So once I saw my dad on video, I knew. I was like, fuck no, something is wrong. Call 911 right now. Y'all need to call 911 right now. It looks like he's having a stroke. And that night, I wish I could have done things differently. And I'm working through this process to be able to accept the fact that I can't change that night. Everything in me would have wanted to say, fuck that, send 911 right now. But knowing who he was and knowing that he's telling her don't call anyone, even though he's actively bleeding in his goddamn brain, he's telling her don't call anyone. And we're trying to figure out. And I was like, no, fuck that. Call somebody now. But that image of seeing my brother wheel him up to the front of the house on video, that shit is imprinted in my brain. And so I'm working through that image and the image of seeing him the night before we removed the ventilator. And I really am grateful for my brother. Shout out to Rashad because he was there every step of the way. I know my brother is very sensitive and I am getting emotional talking about this part of it because that's how much I love my brother. But I know how sensitive he is, but he held us the fuck down during that time. He was there every step of the second. He was there until the very last breath, something that I did not have the capacity mentally or physically to do. And there are feelings that I have about me not being able to show up, but there are also so much love and adoration that I have for my brother and wanting to protect him because he did the hard shit. He did the fucking hard shit. And I be hating on my brother a little bit because I be going through shit and it feels like everybody else around me is just like, oh, I'm just skipping through life. And not that my brother was not fucked up by this because he was, but it's just the resiliency that he has and just that nature of, rolling with the fucking punches or whatever. Whereas my ass having to go to EMDR, regular therapy, having to, do all of this, have cry sessions with my friends. Like I commend him because he's a strong Black man and I love that for him. But as for me, my Black ass is a crybaby and I be stuck. And I really am grateful for this process, really being able to move through this in a way that has been healing and cathartic for me. And there are so many other targets that I want to hit on as a part of this process. So I'm proud of me, goddammit. I'm proud of me for choosing to do this hard work. And it is hard. On Thursdays, I'll be like, don't fuck with me. Don't say no stupid shit to me. Don't come in these meetings talking crazy with me because I have gone through and done some work. I go to therapy every Thursday and I am working through my shit. And so do I recommend EMDR? Absolutely. I'm only one target in, but I absolutely recommend it. It is hard fucking work. Don't sign up for it if you ain't ready to do it. But definitely, if you are ready to do the work, make sure that you explore that. And I definitely will recommend it to my clients and other people because it's helped me just be able to talk about some of these things without me just losing my shit. It's definitely helped with my temperament. I haven't tested it because there are some people that I haven't been going around because of where I was in the process. And so I have had to be protective to not put myself in situations where I could go to fuck off on people if they said the wrong thing to me on the wrong day. I actually tried to reach out to my sister. And when I was out on FMLA to have a conversation with her about some of the things that I had been feeling about how she handled things after my dad's death. But she did not reconnect with me to have that conversation. And so, I was just like, all right, say less, we can keep it where it's at or whatever. And I'm cool on a relationship with her because I don't think that I can have one with her without actually talking through how I feel about how she handled some of the things as it relates to my dad having 4 living children and him kind of essentially leaving things to her, but the rest of us kind of being in a position where we had to step up and do certain things as related to his passing. And so I have a lot of feelings about that, and I'll leave that where it is because I can't have that conversation with her. But that did also re-traumatize to me because what it did to me was it kind of showed me where my dad's value was when it came to his kids. Because my dad and I had conversations all the time about, hey, you need to make sure you take care of this, you make sure you take care of that or whatever. But when the time came, I was not able to do that and make sure that my other siblings were straight from a financial standpoint because that was taken from my hands. And so it kind of left me feeling like even in death, you cared more about one sibling than you did the others. But that's between me, him, and God at this point. But again, that is something that I had to work through in EMDR and kind of leave it where it is or whatever, because I can understand why people's families get torn apart when it comes to things like what's left to this person or that person. But I was determined to not let that be the case with my family and with the death of my dad. But it was something that was a difficult thing for me to work through because it basically kind of left me feeling like I had most of my life with my dad, which was like, okay, yeah, I'm the oldest living, but that's kind of where it starts and ends or whatever. And again, still having all of these feelings and emotions around that while trying to navigate through it. Again, great work in therapy with that. But that's where my journey is. Again, I've been at this since the last week or the first week in June. And so now here we are. It is September the 24th now. And so that's where we are with the journey. I do want to dedicate this episode to one of my good friends. She passed away September the 23rd of 1999. Her name is Carmenita Marie Campbell. You will forever live in my heart, love. And I definitely pray her family continues to thrive. And it was such an unfortunate thing, but this was my first experience with losing someone. And this happened when I was an 11th grader in high school. And so I think that was the first really difficult death that I went through other than Madeir and Thomas, losing them when I was in the 8th grade. So I just wanted to dedicate this to you, love. And I really appreciate you guys tuning in this week. Make sure that you guys follow me on all social media platforms under the handle Treaty LPC. I will be talking more about my journey as I continue to go through it, but I wanted to share this part with you guys. But make sure you guys follow me. Until next time, be safe, be well, and make sure that you take care of your mental health.